Hello and welcome to Kekistan First News. I am your host, Zachary Elliott, and we are a news network simply devoted to giving you, the people, the truth. We do not have any political party affiliation. We attempt to bring our personal opinions separate from the news. And with no further ado, let's move on to our first story. The story we're going to look at today is the South African plight. Now, many farmers in South Africa are being attacked. The bulk of them are white. And many South Africans, white South Africans in general, are very scared. In an article entitled, "White South Africans are preparing for removal of all whites within 5 years," from ZeroHedge.com, starts, "Back in March, the president of South Africa made a shocking suggestion which left many white landowners fearing that they would face a race war within the near future. In a speech, Jacob Zuma announced that he wanted the government to begin confiscating white-owned lands before redistributing them to black South Africans. Zuma wants a pre-colonial land audit of land use and occupation patterns to help decide which lands need to be taken, and has said that we need to accept the reality that those who are in parliament where laws are made, particularly the black parties, should unite because we need a 2/3 majority to effect changes in the Constitution. It is believed that Zuma is calling for this radical action in response to the rise of a rival political party known as the Economic Freedom Fighters, who have long called for the confiscation of white-owned lands. Obviously, this kind of talk doesn't bode well for the future of South Africa. You have the leaders of the first and third most popular political parties, both of which promote socialist ideas, openly declaring that they want the government to steal from an entire racial group. Since these political parties wouldn't be in power unless they had some degree of popular support, it's clear that black South Africans are increasingly turning against their white neighbors. It is a perfect recipe for genocide. It's conditions like that which have spawned organizations like the Sudlanders, a massive civilian-run civil defense group that is dedicated to protecting Afrikaners in the event of social collapse or civil war. They're currently getting ready for the possibility of a government-implemented genocide of white South Africa. Last month, the British woman Sue Howarth and her husband Robert Lynn were awoken at 2 a.m. by 3 men breaking into a window of their remote farm in Dullstroom, a small town in the northeast of South Africa, about 240 kilometers from the nearest capital. The couple who had lived in the area for 20 years were tied up, stabbed, and tortured with a blowtorch for several hours. The masked men stuffed plastic bags down Mrs. Howarth's throat and attempted to strangle her husband with a bag around his neck. The couple were bundled into their own truck, still in their pajamas, and driven to a roadside where they were shot. Mrs. Howarth, 64, a former pharmaceutical company executive, was shot twice in the head. Mr. Lynn, 66, was shot in the neck. Miraculously, he survived and managed to flag down a passerby early on Sunday morning. Mrs. Howarth, who police said was unrecognizable from her injuries, had multiple skull fractures, gunshot wounds, and horrific burns to her breasts. Sue was discovered amongst some trees lying in a ditch, writes Jana Bashoff, reporter for the local Middleburg Observer newspaper. Her rescuers managed to find her by following her groans of pain and then noticing drag marks from the road into the field. Her head was covered with a towel, her eyes swollen shut. She was partially clothed and with just scrapes of her shirt remaining. Her breasts and upper body was bloody. The bag, shoved down her throat, took some effort to remove because her jaw was clamped down tightly. How she managed to breathe with the bag in her throat remains a mystery. One of her rescuers later recalled how Sue was unresponsive except for the constant groaning. Whilst the man ran back to the road to see if an ambulance had not arrived yet, she managed to curl one of her arms around her breasts in a last attempt to protect herself. She was rushed to the hospital and placed on life support, but died 2 days later. Due to her British nationality, her murder attracted an unusual amount of overseas media attention. In any other country, such a crime would be almost unthinkable, but in South Africa, these kinds of farm attacks are happening nearly every day. This year so far, there have been more than 70 attacks and around 25 murders, and similar attacks on white farmers. Earlier this month, for an example, 64-year-old Nikki Simpson was tortured with a power drill during an attack involving 3 men at her home on a farm in Vale area, about 2 hours' drive from Johannesburg. When paramedics arrived, they found 3 dead dogs and a woman lying in a pool of blood. Spokesman Russell Mering told News 24 that they had used a drill to torture her. Police spokesman Lungelo Dlamini said, "Official statistics on farm attacks are non-existent due to what human rights groups have described as a cover-up by the notoriously corrupt and potentially complicit South African government. The most reliable numbers are released by the Transvaal Agricultural Union, which represents commercial farmers and civil rights groups in AfriForum. According to the TAU, last year there were 345 attacks, resulting in 70 deaths, the highest death toll since 2008. In 2015, there were 318 attacks, resulting in 64 deaths, and the year before, 277, resulting in 67. In total, between 1998 and the end of 2016, 1,848 people have been murdered in farm attacks, 1,187 farmers, 490 family members, 147 farm employees, and 24 people who happened to be visiting the farm at the time. While South Africa has one of the highest rates of violent crime anywhere in the world, the attacks on white farmers are no ordinary crime. In a 2014 report, The Reality of Farm Tortures in South Africa, AfriForum wrote that the horror experienced during farm tortures is almost incomprehensible. The well-known Blood Sisters from the South African company Crime Scene Cleanup have rightly indicated that, in their experience, farm tortures are by far the most horrific acts of violence in South Africa, the report said. They are of the opinion that the term farm murders is misleading, and that the term farm terror and farm tortures are more suitable. While sometimes farmers and their families are tortured to obtain information, such as the whereabouts of keys to the safe, human rights groups say that the excessive brutality may be intended to send a message to the general farming community: get out of the country. Victims are often restrained, harmed with weapons such as machetes and pitchforks, burned with boiling water or hot irons, dragged behind vehicles, and shot. Female victims are often raped during the attacks. AfriForum warns that these attacks are becoming increasingly sophisticated, military-style raids, but says community farmers watch groups and sharing of information on WhatsApp and Facebook were thwarting a significant number. The 3 men responsible for killing Mrs. Howarth, Themba William Yika, Nkosia Kosanathi Yika, and Lucas Mao. Themba William Yika, Kosanathi Yika, and Lucas Macau were arrested soon after, and more than 150 farmers turned up to demonstrate outside the court. But any form of justice is incredibly rare, and white farmers are increasingly questioning their future. The number of white farmers in South Africa has halved in a little over 2 decades to just 30,000. Thousands more farms are up for sale. This is an article from the AmericanFreePress.net. Since Nelson Mandela and the Communist African National Congress, the ANC, took over South Africa, more than 70,000 whites have been murdered, and an untold number have been robbed, raped, and tortured. But you not hear about this in Western media, which fawns over the black terrorists who now run in the once prosperous country. Claudia Bryan is a South African activist living in London. Her grandmother owned a bakery in South Africa. One day, 6 blacks entered the bakery and gang raped her. Then they tried to shoot her. The gun jammed. In anger, they gang raped her again. And then the 70-something woman died. Robbery was not the motive. One of the South African Family Relief Project volunteers who drove this writer around Durban during a recent fact-finding visit to South Africa related the experience of a co-worker. This man and his adult son were working on their boat at their home in an upscale area when two blacks came up the driveway and demanded the keys to the son's car. When the father refused, the blacks shot him in the head, dead, and fled. Jolene Trichard, my Johannesburg guide's daughter-in-law, was one of the managers at a nightclub called Truth several years ago. The nightclub was open once a week for parties and dances. One night, 4 armed blacks burst in, firing handguns, and attacked the staff. They beat one manager with a pistol and kicked Miss Trichard repeatedly when she disobeyed their orders to keep their eyes down and to not look. The bandits made off with the night's proceeds, 400,000 rand, roughly 40,000 American, as well as the staff's cell phones. They were never caught. South Africa has the highest rape rate in the world and the second highest murder rate, making the country more dangerous than most parts of Iraq. Most victims and perpetrators are black. Rapes are rampant in black schools, and parents often accept a small sum of money as financial compensation for their raped daughter rather than going to the corrupt and incompetent police. The website Genocide Watch observes about 50 people on average are murdered in South Africa per day, of which at least 20 of them are white. 95% black on white murder rate. Please take into consideration that white people make up only 9%, 4.5 million of the demographics in South Africa, and therefore the white murder rate in South Africa is quite significant. For a bribe, police case files can be made to disappear, and the case never comes to court. Traffic stops are often an excuse for a bribe. 100 Rand note, $10, my host told me, would usually make the traffic stop go away. Worse, police are sometimes the perpetrators of carjackings and robberies. One incident, the attempted kidnapping of a rich Chinese couple in an upper-class area of Johannesburg, was captured on a cell phone and seemed to be perpetrated by police in the guise of stopping to question the couple. The video has gone viral on the internet. The mounting homicidal violence against whites, the denial of access of jobs to whites, and the erasing of their culture and history means genocide is on the installment plan. Could America be next? Now, I don't know about that last part. America doesn't seem to be anywhere near what South Africa is today. But something is wrong in South Africa. Something needs to be done. Now, whether or not genocide is actually taking place in South Africa is not my place to say. I've simply read off a couple articles that show different details about the plight in South Africa. Whether or not you have family members in South Africa, if you can offer your support, there will be 2 links in the description below for places you can donate to help relocate white South Africans. Well, that's it for our broadcast. If you enjoyed it, please click like down below and be sure to subscribe. And don't forget to hit the little bell so that you get our notifications when we post our new videos. We're going to try to put these out as often as possible, but please bear with us, we're just starting out. If you'd like any stories that you want us to cover, please let us know. And if you want to hear more opinionated show, go follow our friends down below at KWO. They have a great podcast. They're on their 2nd episode right now. And for all of us here at Kekistan First News, we hope you have a great day and have a wonderful evening. Thank you and goodbye. Do a little outro. Yeah. Do. Oh, moving around. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm making an. Got my Keck statuette. Yeah. Got it from eBay.